My mom secretly changed her will to cut me out, then acted confused when I disappeared. I always believed my mother loved me unconditionally, that no matter what, I'd have a place in her heart and her home. But when I found out she'd rewritten her entire will behind my back and erased me from it like I never existed, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just packed my bags and vanished. And the most shocking part? She acted like she had no idea why. Growing up, I never doubted that I was close to my mom. I was the only child from her first marriage, and for years, it was just the two of us against the world. She used to call me her lifeline. I stayed with her through her divorce, through lean years, through her building her small bookkeeping business from the ground up. I was there when she remarried and when my half-brother was born. I was there when her business grew, and I was there when it failed. Through it all, I stayed loyal. Sometimes I think more loyal than a child should ever have to be. But something started shifting after my stepdad passed away. It wasn't immediate. It was slow. My mom became more dependent on my half-brother, Darren. He was younger than me by almost 15 years, and I'd always been more of a babysitter than a sister to him growing up. He was charming, sociable, and the kind of guy who could talk himself out of anything. And he often did. After the funeral, Darren moved back in with Mom, said he just wanted to help out. I wasn't worried at first. He had a bit of a rocky track record. Failed out of college twice, fired from 3 jobs, but always landed on his feet thanks to Mom's generous support. She wrote it off as him still figuring life out. But I started noticing changes. Darren started speaking on behalf of my mom, about finances, decisions, even things like doctor appointments. Mom started becoming vague about things that used to be open topics, like her retirement or what she planned to do with the house. If I brought up anything about helping her out in the future, she'd wave me off or change the subject. Then came the strangest moment. I came over one afternoon to take her to lunch, something we did every few weeks, and Darren answered the door. He smiled like always, but the way he blocked the doorway, the way he tilted his head at me like I was a stranger, set something off in me. "Mom's tired," he said. She asked to reschedule. I peered inside, and she was sitting on the couch, quietly watching TV. She didn't even look up. I left confused. But that confusion turned into suspicion when I got a call from her lawyer's office 2 weeks later. The assistant asked if I would be attending the reading of her updated estate plans the following month. I hadn't known there was an update. I called my mom immediately. "Oh, it's just some boring paperwork," she said, chuckling like I was being silly. "Just wanted to clean up some language. You don't need to worry about any of that." That was the moment the first crack turned into a fracture. I told myself I was overreacting, that there was no way she'd make major changes without at least telling me. But I was wrong. The day of the will reading felt surreal from the moment I pulled into the parking lot. My mom had told me I didn't need to come, but I showed up anyway. I wasn't going to let legal paperwork be hidden behind closed doors. Not when I knew something was off. The air that day was humid, heavy, like it knew something was about to break. I stepped into the lawyer's office, expecting a bland formality. Instead, I walked into a quiet war zone. Darren was already seated at the long wooden table, wearing a smug expression that made my stomach churn. He gave me a half smile and said, "Didn't expect you to come." I ignored him and took a seat across the table. Then my mom walked in. She looked tense, like someone bracing for a storm. She barely looked me in the eyes before sitting beside Darren. She didn't say a word. Her attorney, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat and launched into the formalities. He spoke in that slow, neutral tone that lawyers always seem to have. But then he got to the real part. The part where everything shifted. My mom had updated her will 3 months earlier. In the new version, Darren was to inherit the house. Darren would receive all personal assets, furniture, heirlooms, jewelry. Darren was named sole beneficiary of her life insurance. Darren was granted full power of attorney if she became incapacitated. My name wasn't even mentioned. It was like I'd been erased. Not reduced. Not given a smaller piece. Erased. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the paper Mr. Hargrove slid in front of me, rereading it in disbelief. I looked up at my mother. She was staring at the wall, her face completely blank. Finally, I broke the silence. "What is this?" My voice shook, but I didn't yell. I wanted an explanation. Something. Anything. She blinked slowly and gave me the most chilling answer I've ever heard in my life. "I didn't think you'd care that much about money." Money? Was that what she thought this was? I had been her caregiver for years. Helped her through medical scares. Dropped everything when she needed rides, food, help around the house. This wasn't about money. It was about betrayal. It was about the message she sent me in black and white. You don't matter enough to be included. I turned to Darren. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, that same smug grin plastered across his face. I didn't ask for this, he said, in the fakest innocent voice I've ever heard. I knew better. I knew his fingerprints were all over this. But what destroyed me the most was that my mom let it happen. She signed those papers. She made that choice. Mr. Hargrove handed me a duplicate copy, as per the law. I didn't even look at it. I folded it, put it in my bag, and stood up. I hope you both get everything you want, I said quietly. My mom finally looked at me. Her face twisted, not with guilt, with confusion. Where are you going? I didn't answer, because I didn't know the full answer yet. But I knew it would be far away from them. After the will reading, I didn't go home, I drove. For hours. I ended up at a motel 2 towns over, sitting on a scratchy bedspread, staring at the TV without turning it on. My phone buzzed twice, once from my mom and once from Darren. I didn't answer either one. It's not that I wanted them to suffer. I just couldn't understand how they didn't see what they'd done. I felt like a ghost, like I'd died and they'd moved on without telling me. The days after that were a blur. I didn't go back to my apartment for almost a week. When I finally did, I packed everything that truly mattered to me into 3 boxes. Some photos, my dad's old watch, a few books, and a tiny, handwritten letter my mom had sent me years ago that simply said, "You're the one I know I can always count on." I stared at those words for a long time. What changed? Was that version of her ever real? I decided to disappear, not in a dramatic way, but in the kind that hurts the most, silence. I stopped responding. No calls, no texts. I didn't send an explanation. I didn't demand answers. I blocked Darren. I muted my mom. And no one came after me. No knocks at the door. No long apology emails. No late night, teary voicemails asking where I'd gone. For the first time in my life, I realized that I was the one always reaching out, always trying to hold the family together, always forgiving. Now that I'd stopped, nothing. It was like a curtain had dropped. I moved to a new city a month later. Found a new job. Started over quietly. I kept thinking I'd feel empty, angry, like something vital had been ripped away. But what I felt instead was something else entirely, clarity. Without the weight of their expectations. I could finally breathe. I made friends who liked me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. I stopped living in the shadow of always being the good one, and started choosing peace over obligation. But then, just as I was beginning to heal, I got an email from my mom. Subject line: "Please talk to me." There was no message. Just that. A blank email. Like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. I didn't reply. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just didn't have the energy to open that wound again until I knew it wouldn't be a repeat of before. She didn't follow up. Not for weeks. Then months. And yet, I still checked that inbox every night. Waiting. Wondering. Would she ever actually say something? Would she ever acknowledge what she did? Or did she still think I was just overreacting? 3 months passed since that empty email. Life was calm, steady. I had a new daily rhythm, walks to work, coffee with kind strangers turned friends, weekend hikes. I even started journaling again, trying to unlearn years of people-pleasing that had been programmed into me by my family. And then it came. Not a message, not a call, a letter. Handwritten. From her. It arrived in an envelope with shaky cursive and no return address. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it, like touching it might set off a tripwire in my chest. I finally tore the flap. Inside was a 3-page letter from my mom. It wasn't what I expected. At first, I was hopeful. The first few lines sounded heartfelt. She missed me, she didn't know how to fix things, and she wished we could go back to how things used to be. But then the tone changed. Suddenly, she was justifying everything. "I didn't cut you out of the will, I just adjusted it for fairness. You've always been so independent. I thought you'd understand why Darren needed more. You disappearing like that broke my heart, and frankly, it was a very immature way to handle things." There it was. That familiar twist. The rewrite of history. The quiet shifting of blame. The manipulation wrapped in maternal concern. She didn't mention my dad's wishes. She didn't acknowledge that I was never told, never given a chance to ask, to argue, to grieve the change. She acted like the real betrayal was me choosing to walk away. I folded the letter up and placed it in a drawer. Then I went for a walk. A long one. My feet carried me through the streets of my new city as my mind buzzed. My mother's words kept echoing. I thought you'd understand. You've always been so independent. Darren needed more. But I wasn't okay. I wasn't okay with being erased, with being expected to carry strength while others carried greed. I remembered how, growing up, I was the one who kept peace when Darren acted out. I'd cover for him. I'd help him with his homework. I even bailed him out of trouble more times than I could count. And yet he got rewarded. I got discarded. I realized then that this letter wasn't an apology. It was a strategy. A carefully worded olive branch designed not to make things right, but to reset control. She didn't want to fix what was broken. She just wanted me back in line. The next morning, I sat down with a pen and wrote a letter of my own. I didn't match her length. I didn't mirror her tone. I wrote just enough to say what needed saying. You didn't just change a will. You changed the way I see everything I believed about our relationship. I'm not angry anymore, but I won't come back to a version of love that only works when I'm silent. If you ever truly want to talk, really talk, and listen, then maybe we can begin again. But not like this. I signed it. No love, no sincerely. Just my name. I didn't expect her to understand. But I hoped it would plant something. A crack in the mirror she'd been staring into for years. I mailed it the next day. And then once again I waited. Weeks went by after I mailed my response. No reply. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive forwarded email. Just silence. It was oddly peaceful, until a number I didn't recognize rang my phone one Thursday afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a notification popped up. Hey, it's your mom. I'm in town. I'd really like to talk. Face to face. Just once. My stomach dropped. Part of me wanted to delete the message and move on. But something in her voice, cracked, not smug, made me pause. Maybe it was the first sign of real vulnerability I'd ever heard from her. I agreed. Hesitantly. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Neutral territory. Public. Safe. She was already seated when I arrived, older somehow smaller. No makeup. Hair pulled back simply. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but I didn't smile. Not yet. She opened with small talk. I didn't bite. Finally, she sighed and said, You probably hate me. Maybe I deserve it. But I didn't come here to pretend anymore. And for the first time in my life, my mother told the truth. She admitted that changing the will wasn't just about fairness. She had been angry at me. Angry that I moved out young. Angry I didn't visit as often. Angry that I refused to bail Darren out the last time he got into legal trouble. You were always the good one, the easy one. I thought you didn't need anything from me. Darren, he's always needed so much. I guess I got used to giving him more, even when it didn't make sense. She paused, looked down at her tea. Her voice got quieter. But I didn't realize I was punishing you for being strong, or that strength can still feel pain. I didn't expect to cry. But I did. Not out of sadness. Out of release. All those years of feeling invisible, like love was something I had to earn by shrinking myself. It started to break apart right there. We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, It wasn't about the money. It was about the message. You made it clear who you were willing to fight for. And it wasn't me. She nodded. No excuses. I know. I've replayed it over and over. I can't undo what I did. But if there's any way back from this, I want to try. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet. But for the first time, we were speaking as equals. Not as a mother holding power over her child, but as two fractured humans trying to rebuild something broken. I told her it would take time. That I wasn't ready to trust her fully. That forgiveness wasn't a guarantee. It was a process. She accepted that. Before we left, she reached into her purse and handed me a folded paper. It was a copy of a revised will. I didn't want this to be the reason we reconnect. But I needed you to know, I've made it right. I didn't open it there. I didn't even know if I'd look at it for a while. Because what mattered more than the document was the fact that she finally saw me. And this time, she didn't look away.